Blood on Snow tells a story that no one can ignore. At Fort Pine Ridge Military Base in Alaska, it told a story that would shake the foundations of everything 300 battle-hardened soldiers believed about the line between wild and tame, between instinct and trust. The Crimson Trail led to an 800-pound grizzly bear, its massive body slumped against the base's perimeter fence, 3 bullet wounds seeping life into the frozen ground. But it wasn't the blood that captured every soldier's attention. It was the bear's eyes gazing at them with an almost human awareness, silently begging for help from the very species that had tried to destroy it. The events that brought this magnificent creature to seek sanctuary among humans began on a morning when winter still held Alaska in its icy grip. At -15 degrees, the air bit sharply enough to freeze tears, and the sun barely managed to lift its pale golden face above the snow-covered peaks. Fort Pine Ridge stood as an ordered grid of buildings and fences against the untamed Alaskan landscape, a fortress of human civilization where every minute followed strict military precision. Staff Sergeant Mike Collins performed his routine morning perimeter check, his boots crunching through the fresh powder as steam rose from his breath in the frigid air. 20 years of military service had trained him to notice even the smallest departures from normal routine. That morning, as the base came alive with the usual activities, nature itself seemed to be sounding an alarm. The wildlife that typically kept its distance had vanished entirely. The ravens that normally circled the base in hopes of scavenging breakfast had disappeared. Even the wind held its breath. The first warning came as a metallic clatter from the west gate, followed by a sound that didn't belong in the carefully ordered world of the military base. A deep, pain-filled growl echoed across the snow-covered ground, stopping every soldier within earshot in their tracks. Through the morning mist, a massive shape emerged, moving with the unsteady gait of a wounded warrior. Time seemed to slow as the shape took form. An adult grizzly bear, standing nearly 8 feet tall, stumbled toward the base's main entrance. Its magnificent brown fur, which should have shone with health in the morning light, was matted with dark patches of blood. The beast's movements, normally powerful and precise, came in jerky, desperate lurches. With each step, fresh crimson drops marked its path in the pristine snow beneath its massive paws. The sight sent the base into immediate action. Security teams moved into position with practiced efficiency. The base veterinarian, Dr. James Wilson, rushed to assess the situation, though his experience had never prepared him for a patient of this magnitude. Base Commander Sarah Martinez emerged from the command center, her mind already racing through the implications of this unprecedented situation. As the morning light strengthened, the full extent of the bear's injuries became clear. Multiple bullet wounds marked its massive body, telling a story of human cruelty and desperate survival. The proud creature, a symbol of the wild's untamed power, now stood before them as a testament to nature's vulnerability. Blood steamed in the frozen air as it dripped onto the snow, each drop a silent plea for help. The bear's eyes told a story that touched something deep in every soldier present. These were not the fierce, wild eyes of a predator, but the pain-filled gaze of a creature seeking salvation in the most unlikely of places. Somewhere in its primitive understanding, this magnificent animal had made a conscious choice to approach the human settlement, defying its natural instincts in a desperate bid for survival. For the soldiers of Fort Pine Ridge, trained to face enemy fire and handle any crisis, this moment would test not just their professional duties, but their very humanity. As the bear finally collapsed against the outer fence, its strength failing, even as its eyes remained fixed on the humans before it, none of them could have imagined that their next actions would become a story of compassion that would challenge the boundaries between wilderness and civilization. Within minutes of the bear's collapse, Fort Pine Ridge transformed from a military installation into something unprecedented in its history. Commander Sarah Martinez stood at the command center window, her mind calculating possibilities that no military training had ever covered. The weight of command had never felt heavier on her shoulders. One wrong decision could cost not only the bear's life, but potentially endanger her entire base. Through her binoculars, she watched Dr. James Wilson work with methodical precision. The base veterinarian moved carefully around the perimeter fence, maintaining a safe distance while conducting his assessment. His military medical kit, designed for service dogs and the occasional wildlife emergency, seemed almost laughably inadequate for the task at hand. Yet his movements remained steady, professional, years of experience evident in every careful observation. The morning light now fully illuminated the gruesome scene. What initially appeared as 3 bullet wounds revealed themselves to be part of a more sinister story. 5 distinct entry points marked the bear's massive body, each telling its own tale of human cruelty. The placement of the wounds suggested this was no act of self-defense. Someone had deliberately tried to kill this magnificent creature, yet had succeeded only in delivering a slow, painful sentence. Security teams maintained their positions, weapons ready, but lowered. The bear's labored breathing created small clouds in the frigid air, each exhale weaker than the last. Blood no longer flowed freely from the wounds, instead seeping slowly into the crimson-stained snow. Time was running out. Major Tom Henderson, the base's head of security, approached Commander Martinez with his assessment. The bear had managed to breach the outer perimeter sensors without triggering any alarms, likely due to its slow, stumbling approach. Under normal circumstances, this would be cause for a full security review. Today it seemed almost providential. Had the alarm sounded, standard protocol would have demanded immediate action, leaving no room for the decision they now faced. Dr. Wilson's voice crackled over the radio with clinical precision. The bear's wounds appeared to be between 24 and 36 hours old. The animal had likely been shot multiple times before escaping into the wilderness. Instead of finding shelter in the deep forest, it had somehow navigated miles of treacherous terrain to reach the base. The implications of this behavior defied everything they knew about wild animals. More personnel arrived with each passing minute. The base's environmental officer brought detailed maps of known bear territories in the region. The head of medical services offered expertise in trauma care, though her experience was entirely with human patients. Even the kitchen staff stood ready, knowing that if they somehow saved this creature, feeding it would become their responsibility. Commander Martinez gathered her core team in the command center, their breath fogging the cold window as they watched the scene unfold. The bear's choice to seek human help presented them with a moral dilemma that transcended military protocol. Standard procedure dictated that wild animals, especially predators, should be considered threats and handled accordingly. Yet every person in that room felt the weight of something extraordinary taking place. The next few minutes would determine not just the fate of this wounded bear, but test the very boundaries of human compassion. As Commander Martinez surveyed her team's faces, she saw her own internal struggle reflected in their eyes. They had trained for combat, for natural disasters, for every conceivable military scenario, but nothing had prepared them for this moment where duty and humanity collided in the presence of a wild creature that had chosen to trust them with its life. Time slipped away like blood in the snow as Commander Martinez faced the most unconventional decision of her military career. The wounded bear's breathing grew more labored with each passing minute, its massive chest rising and falling in an increasingly irregular rhythm. Inside the command center, the atmosphere crackled with tension as her team wrestled with a situation no military manual had ever addressed. Dr. Wilson's assessment painted a stark picture. Without immediate medical intervention, the bear would die within hours. Yet treating such a powerful wild animal presented risks that went beyond anything they had trained for. One swipe of those claws, even in the creature's weakened state, could prove fatal. The bear's size alone made any rescue attempt dangerous. An adult grizzly of this magnitude could easily weigh over 800 pounds. Major Henderson presented the security perspective with military precision. The base housed sensitive equipment and personnel. Bringing a wild predator inside, regardless of its condition, violated every security protocol in existence. His voice carried the weight of 25 years of military experience as he outlined the potential risks to both personnel and the base's operations. Yet something unprecedented was happening in that room. As each team member shared their thoughts, the conversation shifted from whether they should help to how they could accomplish this impossible task. The head of medical services offered to convert the vehicle maintenance bay into a temporary wildlife medical facility. The logistics officer already calculated how much tranquilizer they would need based on the bear's estimated weight. Even Major Henderson began outlining a secure perimeter plan for the rescue operation. Commander Martinez stood at the window, watching another drop of the bear's blood stain the snow. In her 15 years of command, she had made countless difficult decisions. But this one reached beyond military protocol into something more fundamental about human nature. This magnificent creature had chosen to trust humans, despite having every reason not to. That trust now placed an unexpected burden of moral responsibility on their shoulders. The base communications officer interrupted with urgent news. Higher. Command would need to be notified of any deviation from standard wildlife protocols. The paperwork alone could take days to process. The bear had minutes. In that moment, Commander Martinez made a decision that would either define or end her military career. She initiated emergency base lockdown procedures, an action that would give them 1 hour of operational autonomy before requiring external authorization. Within seconds, alert sirens echoed across Fort Pine Ridge. Security teams secured the perimeter while all non-essential personnel retreated to designated safe zones. As the base transformed around her, Martinez issued a series of rapid-fire orders. The maintenance bay would become their emergency wildlife medical center. Dr. Wilson would lead the medical response team, supported by the base's human medical staff. Security would establish a secure corridor for transporting their unusual patient. Every person received a specific role in what was about to become the most unusual rescue mission in the base's history. Outside, the bear's eyes remained fixed on the humans preparing to either save or end its life. Something in that unwavering gaze seemed to acknowledge the magnitude of trust it had placed in these uniformed strangers. As Commander Martinez strode toward the door to join her team, she carried with her the weight of a decision that would test not just their skills, but their very humanity. The vehicle maintenance bay transformed into a wildlife medical center with breathtaking speed. Military efficiency met desperate improvisation. As soldiers stripped the massive space of vehicles and equipment, the bay's heated concrete floor, normally used for maintaining tanks and trucks, would now serve as the foundation for an unprecedented medical procedure. Industrial lights cast harsh shadows across the space as medical teams rolled in equipment, never meant for a patient of this magnitude. Dr. Wilson stood in the center of the chaos, mentally converting his knowledge of veterinary medicine to accommodate an animal that would dwarf his largest previous patient. The bear's estimated weight required carefully calculated doses of medication. Too little tranquilizer would leave the animal conscious and dangerous. Too much could stop its already weakened heart. He measured and remeasured the doses, knowing they would have only one chance to get it right. Outside, the situation grew more critical with each passing moment. The bear's breathing had become shallow and irregular. Its massive head rested heavily against the fence, eyes glazed with pain, but still tracking the movement of humans around it. Blood had stopped flowing from its wounds, but this brought no relief to the medical team. Internal bleeding remained a serious concern. The rescue strategy came together like pieces of a complex military operation. Security teams established a corridor of armed personnel, not to harm the bear but to protect both it and the medical team if something went wrong. Heavy equipment operators positioned 2 small cranes, ready to lift the enormous animal once sedated. Medical staff prepared a rolling platform large enough to transport their unusual patient, reinforcing it to handle the extraordinary weight. The most critical and dangerous part of the operation loomed before them. Someone would need to get close enough to deliver the tranquilizer. Traditional dart guns lacked the precision they needed with such a critically injured animal. The bear's position against the fence made many angles impossible. A miss could mean losing their only chance to save its life. Staff Sergeant Collins stepped forward for the task. His experience in field operations and steady hands made him the natural choice. The bear already seemed to recognize him from their first encounter. He would approach on foot, armed with nothing but a tranquilizer pole and the hope that the bear truly understood they were trying to help. The next few minutes stretched like hours. Collins moved forward with glacial slowness, his boots crunching softly in the blood-stained snow. The bear's eyes locked onto him, but its head remained still. 20 feet, 15 feet, 10 feet. Each step brought him closer to those massive claws and powerful jaws. Even in its weakened state, the bear could kill him with a single swipe. 5 feet from the fence, Collins began to extend the tranquilizer pole. The bear watched, its eyes showing not fear but something that looked unsettlingly like understanding. 3 feet, 2 feet. The pole's tip nearly touched the bear's shoulder. In that frozen moment, human and animal connected in a way that defied explanation. Then everything went wrong. The tranquilizer pole barely pricked the bear's skin when a distant car backfire shattered the tension. The bear's survival instincts flared to life. Its massive body lurched upward, fueled by adrenaline and fear. The fence rattled violently. As 800 pounds of wounded predator tried to escape, Collins stumbled backward, knowing he had delivered only a partial dose of the tranquilizer. Chaos erupted as the bear fought against both its injuries and the partial sedation. Its roars echoed across the base as it swayed dangerously, caught between consciousness and sedation. The security teams held their positions, weapons ready but waiting. Commander Martinez's voice cut through the chaos, ordering everyone to hold steady. The next few minutes would determine whether their rescue mission became a tragedy. The partial dose began to take effect, but not in the way they had hoped. Instead of sedating the bear completely, it left the animal in a confused state. Its movements became more erratic, its massive body swaying as it fought to stay conscious. The fence began to bend under its weight, threatening to either collapse onto the bear or allow the panicked animal into the base. Dr. Wilson's voice carried above the commotion as he called for emergency measures. They needed to deliver the remainder of the tranquilizer dose, but now they faced a moving target in a state of panic. The original rescue plan crumbled as the situation spiraled into something far more dangerous. As the bear's roars mixed with the shouts of personnel scrambling to respond, everyone present knew that the next few moments would determine whether their compassionate mission ended in triumph or disaster. The partial tranquilizer dose coursing through the bear's massive body created a nightmare scenario. The wounded animal swayed between consciousness and sedation, its enormous frame crashing against the fence with enough force to bend the metal posts. Blood began flowing again from its reopened wounds, turning the snow beneath its paws into crimson slush. Fear and confusion replaced the trust in its eyes as survival instincts battled against the sedative. Dr. Wilson's voice cut through the chaos with devastating news. The bear's elevated adrenaline was fighting the tranquilizer, creating a dangerous chemical reaction in its already weakened system. Its heart rate soared to dangerous levels. They faced a terrible choice between letting the bear's heart give out or risking another approach with the remaining dose. In that moment of crisis, Staff Sergeant Collins witnessed something in the bear's terrified eyes that struck deep into his soul. Beneath the panic and pain, he saw the same desperate plea for help that had brought this magnificent creature to their doorstep. Without warning or permission, Collins made a decision that defied both training and common sense. Shrugging off his tactical vest, he began moving toward the bear. Commander Martinez's orders to stand down faded into background noise. His world narrowed to the wounded animal before him and the crazy plan forming in his mind. The bear's erratic movements made any attempt with the tranquilizer pole impossible. They needed something more precise, more personal. Collins reached slowly into his pocket, withdrawing the emergency auto-injector of tranquilizer Dr. Wilson had distributed to the medical team. Success would require him to get within arm's reach of the bear. One wrong move would place him directly in the path of those deadly claws. The fence rattled again as the bear slammed against it, its movements becoming more uncoordinated with each passing second. Time seemed to slow as Collins closed the distance. The bear's labored breathing filled his ears, along with the pounding of his own heart. 20 years of military service had taught him to recognize the moments that defined a person's character. This was one of them. 3 feet from the fence, he began softly humming an old Alaskan lullaby, one his grandmother had sung to soothe him as a child. The effect was immediate and extraordinary. Something in the low, gentle sound caught the bear's attention. Its frantic movement slowed, its massive head turning toward Collins with newfound focus. In that crucial moment, human and animal connected once again, transcending the barriers between their species. Collins seized his chance. With movements born from years of combat training, he darted forward. The auto-injector found its mark in the bear's shoulder, delivering the remaining dose directly into the muscle. For a heart-stopping moment, the bear's eyes locked with his, inches from the fence. Then its massive paw swung toward him. Collins threw himself backward, but not fast enough. Razor-sharp claws caught his jacket, ripping through the material like paper. The force sent him sprawling into the snow as the bear let out a final, earth-shaking roar. Security teams rushed forward, but Collins waved them back. Something told him to wait, to trust. The next few minutes stretched into eternity. The bear's movements grew progressively slower, its massive body swaying like a tree in a storm. The second dose of tranquilizer, delivered directly into the muscle, worked faster than the first. Eventually, the great creature's legs began to buckle. Dr. Wilson coordinated the response with practiced precision. As the bear finally succumbed to the sedative, emergency teams moved in with the rolling platform. The operation transformed from crisis management to a race against time. Every second the bear remained untreated reduced its chances of survival. Yet in the midst of this controlled chaos, Collins remained where he had fallen, watching as the massive animal finally surrendered to unconsciousness. His torn jacket bore witness to how close he had come to disaster, but his face showed only relief. The trust that had brought this bear to their base had been shaken, but not broken. Now they had a chance to prove that trust warranted. The transformed maintenance bay hummed with intense activity as medical teams worked to save their extraordinary patient. Under the harsh industrial lights, the bear's massive body told a story of survival that left even seasoned military personnel in awe. 5 bullet wounds marked its thick fur, each one revealing the cruel precision of a hunter who had intended not a clean kill, but a slow death. Dr. Wilson's initial examination revealed damage far beyond the visible wounds. Internal bleeding threatened the bear's life even as they worked to repair the external injuries. X-rays showed bullet fragments lodged dangerously close to vital organs. Each breath the sedated animal took seemed to hang in balance, monitored by equipment hastily adapted for its unusual size. The base's human medical team worked alongside Dr. Wilson, their experience with combat injuries proving unexpectedly valuable. Private Sarah Chen, a combat medic with 3 tours of duty, found herself carefully cleaning wounds larger than any she had treated before. Her steady hands moved with practiced precision, though her eyes occasionally widened at the sheer size of their patient. The first 48 hours proved critical. Teams worked in rotating shifts, monitoring vital signs and responding to emergencies that arose with frightening regularity. The bear's heart stopped twice during the first night. Each time the medical team fought to bring it back, their efforts made more challenging by the animal's enormous size and unique anatomy. As dawn broke on the second day, the maintenance bay had transformed into something beyond a mere medical facility. Personnel not involved in the direct care brought coffee and food to the exhausted medical teams. The kitchen staff prepared special nutrient solutions based on Dr. Wilson's specifications, ready for when their patient might wake. Even the base's chaplain visited, offering quiet support to teams stretched to their physical and emotional limits. Small victories emerged like rays of hope through storm clouds. The bear's heartbeat stabilized. Its breathing grew stronger. Blood tests showed improving numbers, yet each step forward seemed matched by new challenges. Infection set in around 2 of the bullet wounds, requiring aggressive treatment. The bear's size made turning it to prevent pressure sores a major operation requiring 10 people. The base's welding team fabricated special medical equipment to support the massive animal's weight. Engineers modified monitoring systems to accommodate readings far beyond human norms. Every department found ways to contribute, turning the rescue into a mission that united the entire base. Personnel who once barely crossed paths now worked, side by side, sharing the common goal of saving this remarkable creature that had chosen them as its last hope. A breakthrough came on the 4th day. During a routine check, Dr. Wilson discovered signs of healing in the oldest wounds. The bear's incredible natural resilience, combined with their constant care, began to show results. Yet they knew the greatest challenge still lay ahead. Eventually, they would need to reduce the sedation, No one could predict how the bear would react to waking in such an unfamiliar environment. Through it all, Staff Sergeant Collins remained a constant presence. His encounter with the bear had left him with a deep sense of connection to their unusual patient. During his off-duty hours, he sat near the sedated animal, sometimes reading mission reports aloud, other times simply keeping silent vigil. Other personnel began joining him, turning the maintenance bay into an unlikely gathering place where soldiers shared stories and found moments of peace beside their sleeping charge. Commander Martinez visited daily, watching her base transform through the shared mission of mercy. The military precision remained, but something else had grown alongside it. In saving this bear's life, her personnel had discovered a different kind of strength. She saw it in the gentle way combat-hardened soldiers monitored vital signs, in the reverent touches as they changed bandages, in the soft voices they used around their unconscious patient. As the first week of care drew to a close, the bear's condition finally stabilized enough to consider the next phase of recovery. Yet the greatest test still lay ahead. Soon they would begin the delicate process of bringing their patient back to consciousness, knowing that all their hard work could be undone in moments if the bear woke in panic. The trust that had brought this magnificent creature to their gate would face its ultimate test. Spring arrived at Fort Pine Ridge with the first signs of thawing snow, marking 2 months since the wounded bear had stumbled into their lives. The maintenance bay, now dubbed the Bear Den by base personnel, had witnessed a transformation as remarkable as the changing season. Their massive patient, once clinging to life, now stood tall again, its wounds healed into scars hidden beneath thick fur that had regained its healthy shine. The bear's recovery became a series of unforgettable moments etched into the base's collective memory. The first time it lifted its head after sedation, eyes showing recognition rather than fear. The day it accepted food from Dr. Wilson's hands, demonstrating an unprecedented trust in humans. The morning it rose to its full height, letting out a roar that echoed through the base not in pain or fear, but in restored strength. News of the extraordinary rescue spread far beyond the base's boundaries. Media outlets across the country picked up the story of the military installation that had turned itself into an emergency wildlife hospital. Letters and emails poured in from around the world, praising the base's compassion. Wildlife organizations reached out offering support and documentation for new protocols. The story touched something deep in people's hearts, a reminder of the unexpected connections possible between humans and wild creatures. Commander Martinez found herself facing a new kind of challenge as the bear's release date approached. The base's entire routine had evolved around their unusual resident. Personnel scheduled their breaks to visit the bear den. The kitchen staff took pride in preparing special meals that helped the bear regain its strength. Even the most hardened soldiers found excuses to pass by and check on their patient's progress. The decision to release the bear came with the first warm days of spring. Dr. Wilson confirmed their patient had regained its full strength, and keeping it longer would only make its return to the wild more difficult. They chose a remote location deep in the national forest, far from hunting grounds but close to natural food sources. The preparations felt like planning a military operation, with every detail carefully considered to ensure the bear's successful return to its natural habitat. On release day, the base fell into an unusual quiet. The bear seemed to sense the significance of the moment as it was carefully loaded into a specially modified transport vehicle. Staff Sergeant Collins, whose bond with the animal had only deepened during its recovery, received permission to accompany the release team. His torn jacket from their first dramatic encounter hung framed in the base's recreation room, a reminder of the day everything changed. The release site lay 2 hours from the base in a meadow just awakening with spring growth. As the transport doors opened, everyone held their breath. The bear emerged slowly, its powerful frame moving with the grace that had returned through weeks of healing. It paused at the meadow's edge, turning to look back at the humans who had saved its life. In that moment, the barrier between wild and tame, between military precision and natural instinct, seemed to dissolve. Then, with a gentle huff that seemed almost like farewell, The bear turned and disappeared into the forest. The sound of breaking branches faded until only the spring breeze remained. Many eyes dampened with tears, though no one commented on it. Back at Fort Pine Ridge, the bear's legacy lived on in unexpected ways. Commander Martinez implemented new wildlife response protocols, creating a model that other military installations began to adopt. The maintenance bay retained a section dedicated to wildlife emergencies, equipped with the specialized tools they had developed. Dr. Wilson's detailed records of the bear's treatment became a valuable resource for wildlife veterinarians across the country. But the most profound changes lived in the hearts of the base's personnel. The shared mission of mercy had forged bonds stronger than any training exercise. Soldiers who participated in the rescue found themselves more attuned to the wilderness around them, more aware of their connection to the natural world. The base's character had shifted, becoming not just a military installation but a place where compassion and duty could coexist. Years later, base personnel would sometimes report glimpses of a large grizzly bear with distinctive scars watching the base from the tree line. Though no one could prove it was their former patient, these sightings always brought smiles and a sense of pride. The bear that had stumbled into their lives had left them with something invaluable, a reminder that sometimes the greatest acts of courage come not from following protocol, but from following your heart. Love amazing animal rescue stories? Subscribe to our YouTube channel Legacy Stories for more incredible stories like this one. Every week we share stories that will touch your heart. Don't miss our next video. Hit subscribe and the bell icon now to join our family of animal lovers.